type them in the chat box. We'll have time to go over them at the end. This webinar is being recorded, so if you miss anything or would like to go back to watch it again in the future, it will be uploaded to the Conservation Nebraska YouTube channel within the next couple of weeks. We'll have a short poll pop up on the screen at the end of the presentation, and we'd be so appreciative if you could complete this, as it helps us improve on future webinars and events. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gus.
All right. Thank you, Kat. Can everybody hear me? All right. I'm very excited to host this webinar as a partner with Conservation Nebraska. I urge you to take a look at all of their other programming and other webinars that they have posted on Facebook. I am one of many really great topics that permaculture is amongst, and we have great organizations doing great things throughout Nebraska. So please look into more of these great webinars that they are hosting. So as Kat mentioned, my name is Gus von Roenn, and I am the founder and executive director of Omaha Permaculture. We are a local environmental nonprofit, local as in Omaha, and we are helping the city of the Omaha maintain vacant properties. Along the way, we are educating our community about permaculture practices, as well as feeding our community and talking about environmental conservation. Tonight, I have a PowerPoint. Hopefully, it's not a very boring PowerPoint, not something that is death by PowerPoint, but it is the best way to get all of these points across. So I have a very long PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to move through a few topics. One of them, just getting you acquainted with what is permaculture in Nebraska. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Omaha permaculture. How do we apply those principles? And then lastly, I'm going to get into the topic of our presentation tonight, which is eggs over easy, how to raise backyard chickens without a lot of headache, and hopefully kind of dispelling a lot of nuance and a lot of maybe preconceptions you have about what it takes. So raising backyard chickens is a great opportunity to raise your own food, amongst many other reasons, to get to know your neighbors and all those other things. So without any further ado, I'm going to start with my presentation, and please let me know, Kat, if we need to stop for any questions or anything, but I'm right now just going to go ahead with the presentation. Can everybody see it? All right. I'm assuming we can. Okay.
I'm not seeing it on my screen just yet, Gus.
Okay, actually,
I
forgot to share. Yeah, let me share it here. There it is.
Okay, I can see it.
There we go. Now we go. All right. As I mentioned, these are the topics: permaculture, Omaha permaculture, and then raising backyard chickens. And as we go into it, I want to talk first about what is Nebraska, what is our situation, and what is our problem? What do we see as something that we can influence and improve with permaculture? The problem in Nebraska is a combination of poor land use, poor stewardship, and then it eventually leads to and manifests itself in severely compromised river water quality. Nebraska has some severely compromised rivers, as you'll see in the following slides. But Omaha and Nebraska as a whole, we're a powerhouse in agriculture. 93% of all acreage is in agriculture. So that means we're working a lot of these acres into growing some food for farmers and ranchers, and there's many ways to do that statewide from west to east. And so we do agriculture. That's what people know us for. We're first in commercial cattle, and we're third in corn productions and exports. And then lastly, we are number one in irrigated acres with our irrigation companies that actually were born here in Nebraska. Thanks to our aquifer, we are able to provide this aquifer water and irrigate all of this acreage we have here. So this makes up Nebraska is the good life. But it also has some effects, and especially depending on the type of farming you're performing, it has the effects of nitrates and nitrites that fall into our water systems, and then they influence the kind of health of the environment around you as well as people. So nitrates have been found to influence certain ailments, the Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, blue baby syndrome, that are all parts of, unfortunately, rural community life. So these are things to pay attention to when we're such an agricultural powerhouse. So while we definitely, this is our bread and butter, it is also something that we can improve on, so that it makes it healthier for everybody. And here's more part about farming, but so much of the world now is in livestock. Very few animals on the planet, 4% are wild animals or mammals. So much are now actually, all of our animals, 60% are in some confinement and are being used for livestock purposes. Similarly, in the birds, 70% of all birds are chickens and other poultry. 30% are wild birds. And so this is the 21st century. We can definitely see who is being given more land or not. Do we need to focus on farming more, or do we focus more on conservation as we move forward as a human society? And this is one of the symptoms that we get to see as to why farming may not be, at least the conventional sense that we know, may not be the best way to go forward. I don't know if you can see the color on your screen, but that water looks like a greenish bluish, but that's not healthy water for anything that's living in that water or anything that comes to that edge of the water and wants to drink it. So this is water is life. And if that's truly, if that's the true wisdom of our times, our water landscapes, and if they look like this, which they often do in the middle of summer in Nebraska, this is not suitable for the environment, for anything living. This is pollution, and it kills biodiversity. The industrial agriculture, forestry, there are a lot of culprits here. And in the real number that the Center of Biological Diversity spoke of a few years ago is that 40% of all biodiversity has been lost in just the last 40 years, thanks to this kind of unfortunate process that ruins our waters. And so permaculture, we see this as a solution, as a way to move forward so that we can bring the communities together and we learn how to mitigate these environmental risks. In permaculture, it's a discipline that a lot of people know for growing food, but it also is a way to it's guided by ethics, and these ethics guide your decisions of your energy solutions, as well as your building solutions, as well as where do you shop, your consumer solutions. So being local obviously keeps the money in your community, keeping a cycle nearby. But similarly, in this cycle, we're taking care of the earth with permaculture ethics. We're taking care of people. And then if we have any extra money, energy, supplies, time in our community, we devote that social equity back to the people that need help in our community. And so this is a cycle. It's a social circle or a social cycle, just as in the cycle of life or the seasonal cycle. And then the nutrient cycle, the hydrological cycle. A lot of things always end up bringing things full circle. And that ends up creating, abundance, and also creating closed loops so that, wastes are not lost, but wastes are interred and brought into as inputs or fertilizers into your next system. So the circles within permaculture are abundant and a constant theme. So I'm going to read off a long definition for permaculture, and it's going to go off. It's going to be these top titles up here, but I'm going to go off through a few slides. Permaculture has many facets, and it needs to be described in a few different ways. But ultimately, it starts off with this sentence: permaculture is sustainable land use design. Permaculture, if you forget anything else I say tonight, what it is most known for is land use design, efficient design. So this is probably one of the best kind of gloss over pictures I could find that talks a lot about the topography in front of you that you may see here in Nebraska. So it talks a little bit about the steep slopes and the ridges, and then you can see the little ravine going through, and then what looks like a little house in the middle. Well, this topography, it immediately points out that on the steep slopes, you're going to probably have drier soil, but during our rains, you're going to have a wet part going through the middle of an area. And then in the middle of the slope, it is kind of the sweet spot. It's the place where Bob Ross would paint his happy tree. It's also where the wind is less in our cold winters. So there's a lot of design elements when you look at a landscape that indicate to a designer what should go in these certain places and in a Bob Ross sort of way, so you can place your happy tree in a suitable space that will flourish. So permaculture is sustainable land use design. Permaculture is based on ecological and biological principles, often using patterns that occur in nature to maximize effect while minimizing wasted energy. So as I was telling you about the cycle, any patterns, the cycles are a great example. But as we can see, nature uses patterns to create efficiencies in its own way. Like the meandering swings of a river, it's depositing silt on the edges and allowing the fast moving water to go in the middle. Similarly, a pine cone is an easier way to distribute the seeds, kind of as the seeds mature. So these are great examples of how nature uses these patterns and to get more efficiencies from a system. Permaculture aims to create stable, productive systems that provide for human needs, harmoniously integrating the land with its inhabitants. So I looked for a great photo that exemplifies what is the best of permaculture. I couldn't really find one. When you see a picture of an eco-village, it's still in kind of conceptual stages for most people's photos. But so I love this photo with a steep photography. It obviously looks like Thailand or Malaysia. But on the hilltops, you have deciduous forests that haven't been removed, and all that fertilizer that comes from having a deciduous forest falls down the landscapes and fertilizes everything below it. The eco-village is at mid-slope because it wants to be out of the wet feet of during monsoon season or anything that's a rainy season. So they're not in the lowlands, but they're not on the highlands that are, obviously the view is nice on the highlands, but in order to be able to benefit from the protection that weather can deal with us on our Nebraska winters, your gas and heater bill will go up a lot higher on those hilltops. So you're spending much less energy to be able to live in a mid-slope area. So this is just a general photo that I'm trying to talk about the harmony that permaculture should have with its surroundings and its environment. And I must say, a picture that is suitable to generalize that we have achieved that as a human race, it still eludes us. It might have been in our previous past, hundreds or thousands of years ago, but ecological processes of plants and animals and their nutrient cycles, the climatic factors and weather cycles are all part of the puzzle of trying to put together your natural system in your backyard or on your farm. So all these different systems and understanding a little bit about what the weather app tells you and what are you looking for the next week out. And then at the same time, understanding that there are insects that are working through your soil and working in the trees, and they're all part of of your growing process. And understanding those nuances part of the design process. And so some of you may be familiar with something called the earth ship. This is just kind of a cutout slice. Inhabitants' needs are provided for using proven technologies for food, energy, shelter, and infrastructure. I believe there is an example of an earth ship in Hastings, Nebraska now. Someone we really need to go be able to see that. But it was come up with, the earthship concept was invented by Mike Reynolds, a kind of an architect who started building things with used materials. Things could be upcycled or recycled, and he's famous for that. You may be able to see this earth rammed tire at the back there. But this living setting, produces your own energy, uses your own waste, your human waste, grows your own food, cleans your own water. It really does all the things that a normal house would do, give you enough amenities so that you didn't feel like you were living in a 19th century, but still be able to do all these things with virtually no cost and virtually no footprint. In permaculture, elements in the system are viewed in relationship to other parts of the elements, where the outputs of one element become the inputs of another system. So this is just a basic crunchy graph showing you that you have inputs that you need every year, every season for your farm or your garden, amending the soil, whatever it might be. And then you have outputs at the end of the year, some kinds of wastes and things and useful things, hay and straw and all these things. We'll try to imagine those as inputs for next year and come up with more ways to develop a cycle. And that is inherent in a permaculture design system. Within a permaculture system, work is minimized, waste become resources, productivity and yields increase, and environments are restored. Here is a before and after of a very dramatic landscape. This is Syria. And this is kind of a very common event in permaculture, is the before and after photos. It's amazing what you can do with just a little design and levels of intent year to year in a passive sort of way that eventually, obviously this didn't happen, these before and after photos didn't happen in 1 month or maybe even 1 year, but at least 3 to 5 years later, you can see measured results in being able to approach what seems insurmountable. In a permaculture, these principles can be applied to any environment at any scale, from dense urban developments to individual homes, from farms to entire regions. So the photo on the left is actually one of our gardens in North Omaha. We have about 12 different farmers feeding close to 150 people. And then here on the right, we have Mark Shepard's farm in Illinois. And this is, I believe, about an 85-acre plot. I think it's actually bigger now. But basically, he's doing permaculture principles at a larger scale. And then even bigger, China is actually restoring and healing a lot of landscapes at massive scale. Denuded farms and ranch land, and so it can be done. It's just you need to get everybody involved and all working towards the same goal of soil health and rehabilitation. And so here is that long definition that I was telling you about here on the left. I kind of broke it up into all these little picture slides to kind of help you digest all the different things permaculture is trying to do. And it's doing this, yes, as an academic pursuit, but it's guided by those ethics, as I mentioned earlier. It's taking care of the earth, taking care of people, and then taking care of everybody else. But if all this is a little complicated and you needed more of a to-do list, here are 6 easy things that you can do in your backyard or your neighborhood that will help and get you closer towards a resilient and more permaculture community. Catch and store your rainwater, grow your own food, pretty much what everybody knows permaculture about. 3, start to create your own resources. Wind and energy, those fixtures, those appliances and features, they're coming down in price, making it much more accessible. and build and retrofit your home to heat and cool itself. So just do conservation a little better. Seal those windows on the north side a little better. All of this goes a long way. So your heater doesn't kick on, or your furnace doesn't kick on all the time. Reduce or create zero waste. This is a biggie. Consumerism is a big deal. After the pandemic, it seems like the whole world is using disposable plastic, and that's just exacerbating a problem that, it is just, perpetuating, everything that is a mankind. We're spreading it all over the world, our toxins in some respect. And then lastly, and kind of the point of permaculture, it's a social construct. It's a social system. Get to know your neighbors. Your neighbors across the street, will have great skills and a wealth of knowledge that you are not aware of, and maybe can grow a better tomato than you can, and you can learn a lot from. So it's this kind of concepts that neighborhoods used to exist and communities used to exist to be able to help each other, and permaculture is all about getting back to that and those in an eco village sort of way. And here's just a quick example that kind of just perpetuates this theme of the culture of growing food. And you can see maybe in that top photo, America, and maybe this is a photograph about California city, but you can see pools all in the backyard. We in the United States, we've never had a world war on our land. Switzerland has. They've had to develop what I would call more of a sustenance culture. In the United States, without having much hardship, we have a little bit of a leisure culture, and we have not used our land to its utmost efficiency in what we could be growing here. We've had our moments of victory gardens, and they usually pop up after a recession, but when good times return, unfortunately, a lot of those victory gardens don't stick around very long. I think after the recent recessions and people not realizing that tomatoes don't taste like the way grandma used to grow tomatoes, I think we're seeing a resurgence of victory gardening and community gardening that is bringing people back and hopefully understanding and developing the desire to grow their own food. And really, this all comes down to, as a Nebraskan, we need to hold on to our soil. It doesn't just wash away in these rains or wash away down the river. We have more miles of river and stream than any other state. We have to build soil. This soil in front of us is the legacy for our grandchildren, so they don't have to work as hard. And if we put in place a way to keep building soil perpetually at every scale and every part of our state, it'll only make Nebraska and our future a healthy place to live. And we can take our cues from nature. Soil is built passively at the bottom of a mulch pile that just been sitting around too long. Or if you walk through your local forest and you feel your feet kind of going through that soft carpet of soft soil, that sponginess underneath your feet, that soil being built. And really, that's where we need to take our cues. It's also happening in the prairies. The prairies, I know people in Nebraska, either you're a prairie person or a forest person. The prairie is serving that same function. They're holding on to the soil longer, and so it doesn't wash away, and building up that soil bank every year. And these are things that, in permaculture, these passive ways of building soil need to kind of have an opportunity to be able to grow, and the opportunity to educate the people around us about what to do and build our own soil. So on that note, how does Omaha Permaculture, the nonprofit that I began, how do we apply some of these permaculture principles, whether it is the social aspects, the soil building, the biodiversity? How do we apply these principles to urban green spaces? So as I was beginning Omaha Permaculture, I saw this map, and this kind of directed our future vision. All these little black dots that you see here are vacant properties surrounding a park in North Omaha, and that's about a mile diameter from top to, or at least left to right on the photo you see. And as a homeowner in North Omaha, I had a little 1/8 acre backyard, and I was like, well, this is a lot of vacant property. This is a lot of land that is not being used effectively and efficiently in our own community. How do we find ways to work within these communities to help them better use this land to grow food? Because this also seems to coincide where this is one of the largest food deserts in Nebraska as well. And growing food in a city is not a new concept. It's not like we need to reinvent anything. This is a picture in 1917 as a photo. It's in Delaware. I believe it's in Dover. You can see the city infrastructure in the background, but the people they walked across the street and they started harvesting probably what they're going to be having for dinner. So this is 100 years ago. And this is something that has been a part of mankind as we've grown alongside cities, especially through the 20th century and now in the 21st. This should not feel like that's something unique for us. Most of our food is out of sight, out of mind when we pick it up at the grocery store. But imagine if you could grow it in that vacant lot across the street from you and learn and observe how food is grown. So this is something we're definitely trying to promote and advocate. And so what do we do? Our mission is to foster community through sustainable land stewardship. What do we do best? We do vacant land stewardship. We are a consultant for many groups in designing edible community green spaces. We provide internships with a 9-week curriculum for high school, college students, and the general public. We work with community groups to enhance neglected vacant land with agricultural and ecological soil building techniques. And we're a community defender of diminishing urban green spaces and tree canopy in the face of urban development. And recently, our new headquarters, which we call Green Space, will exhibit Nebraskan permaculture sustainability practices as an exhibition all year round. What we do year to year, we help the city maintain properties that kind of look like this. We grab the worst of the worst. We're not just out looking to have a land trust or a land bank of our own and have properties. We are helping the City of Omaha Planning Department or the municipal land bank alleviate dumping pressures on their worst land. And so often it can get out of hand, especially here in spring. After the snow thaws, people want to clean out their basement. If we, like in 2019, after the flood, people were cleaning out their damp basements. Dumping happened everywhere, and it was a constant thing that we have to deal with on vacant properties. That's probably the favorite place for people like to go instead of waiting for a spring cleaning day. So these pictures are everywhere. We see them: mattresses, toilets, tires, and it's unfortunate, but it's something that happens in North Omaha. We try to come in and keep the properties clean. We put a sign up front with a phone number so that people can call us and have any questions of how they can get involved or to report more dumping. So we always take those calls 7 days a week so that we can react with the proper people, volunteers, and equipment to remove all of the dumping. So that's the first thing we do. Secondly, the way we maintain the properties is different. We don't just get on a mower and then spread the trash that's there. We actually make sure that the trash has been picked up first, and then we go through the mowers and mostly focus on the curb appeal and mowing paths through some of these properties. So we're not just mowing down some native plants, what could be our vacant property, but we're just trying to make the average lawn look everywhere and try to encourage the aesthetic of what Nebraska, the prairie state, could be. Because having a lawn, doesn't really serve a whole lot of purpose unless, you're going to throw a football out on that lawn, or you can play baseball or do something that is with the kids. And lawns have their place for those reasons. But I encourage you to look at how much of our landscapes here in Nebraska are mowed down that we don't necessarily throw a football on. So why do we have all of this lawn that we need to maintain so much? So in a lot of respects, the land in front of us are opportunities for us to choose different winners and different losers. And the land in front of us is sometimes contaminated and sometimes has a rural or an urban past that makes it difficult. But it's good to know that that land and that soil can be healed. You can improve and passively improve on the land. If you're suspicious of obviously what's in the soil, you can do soil tests, and working with your local extension or Midwest soil labs, send in some tests, and they do cost a little bit. But if you don't want to worry about the soil tests because of the cost or whatever reason, just avoid planting, root vegetables. You can plant a lot of things that will not bring contaminants and toxins up into the plant. So our organization, while we definitely are in situations we have to plant in boxes and raised beds, we're definitely trying to promote healing the existing soil, because as you can see, the rest of this garden and the rest of this property and the rest of the soil, there are many other opportunities to grow more things and fruit trees throughout this whole community garden. So exhausting the full footprint is definitely an opportunity, and being able to grow more food on this one piece of vacant property. You may have seen a social media movement called Grow Food, Not Lawns. If you happen to have a south-facing lawn with your home or wherever you live, I encourage you to turn that south-facing lawn into a place where you can grow your food and vegetables. If you don't have a neighborhood association or some kind of covenant that restricts you from doing these things, or at least getting neighborhood approval, ways to kind of sweeten the pot is to definitely offer your neighbors some of the vegetables. But as done in this photo, you can tell some thought was done in terms of the aesthetics of it. They've done it in rows that look pleasing to the eye. They have not left a lot of things up that are dead and laying. They basically are making sure that it looks nice because it's presentable to the community. And permaculture doesn't want to get a bad name because of just a few dead plants and so forth. And if it happens to be in your front yard, you're part of the presentation and warming this type of aesthetic into Nebraska. And so we do have some picky neighbors that are particular in the way they like to see things. And I encourage you to work with those neighbors and understand their issues and what the problems they have, because we're all in a community and we all want to help each other out. And maybe they have some great ideas about what to do. Another great part with what we're doing in permaculture is we're trying to help the pollinators, and the honeybee obviously is not a native pollinator. It's a part of some of our food system where honey is coming from, but then the monarch is obviously a very important pollinator, and all these pollinators ends up being, they are our superheroes. They make this system work, of keeping our plants pollinated, our food grow. The pollinators, a third of every bite is responsible to our pollinators. So I think that being able to have a backyard or a front yard or shared community spaces that have plenty of blooming native plants, that is a goal that we should have in every single community. As well as, all of our birds, make sure we have plenty of bird habitat, the bat home. If you remove trees, make sure that you're aware, and if new animals, they're scurrying to find somewhere else, somewhere else to live, understand that ecosystem needs to exist as well. And they keep a lot of the pesky bugs, the mosquitoes, and all the things we don't, the flies and all those things, they keep them at bay if you have a healthy ecosystem in your yard or in your community, in your garden. And here is a slide. We've taken a photo of this northern prairie skink, and I did not know they existed here in Omaha, Nebraska as of 10 years ago. And we're finding them underneath all of those pictures of trash. So all these properties these vacant lots that nobody has sprayed, anything, there's nothing toxic on them, but they've just been dumped on. Underneath all that is a replenishing ecosystem. This very sensitive mammal, or not mammal, reptile is very sensitive and would not exist if we were spraying and mowing every single inch of these properties. So, this is biodiversity at, an opportunity to talk about something, and they're fragile. So we don't really want to kind of put them in a little terrarium and show people, hey, this is what's here, because they don't do well when they're, put in a terrarium. They develop their own kind of bacteria that unfortunately are not healthy for them. So they need to be out in nature and on these landscapes. And the best way to talk about them is unfortunately just through a photo. But when you see them, it's so neat to see them. It feels like we're in the southern United States, where you see geckos and lizards and a little bit more common. But anyway, this biodiversity is very exciting. Even me as an old 40-year-old, I got surprised every now and then, and this is very exciting. Another part of the ecosystems around vacant lots are the turkeys, the deer. We are not fencing our gardens. Yes, we are protecting our fruit trees, and there's a reason behind that. But after some time, after taking over some of these properties and having so many fruit trees, someday, hopefully we can back off on all this protection, and that actually everything out there is for all of nature as well as it is for us. I think that right now, because there's so little food bearing plants and trees out there, that the mammals and the animals around us, they're always looking for food, and it's not always in the nice places. They're sometimes going through our trash or whatever it might be, the raccoons and so forth. So we need to have enough room out there, enough food out for all of our animals and everything else in the ecosystem. So now I'm going to go through a few permaculture kind of ideas and design concepts that help you come up with your own permaculture design system. And this is just an observation here. There are canopy layer trees, and then there's load layer trees. And then same thing in the root layer, you have different types of roots that go down and tap the moisture and the nutrient profile in different ways. As you can tell from the carrot there on the 5, to some of the tap roots there on 4 and 5, versus the dispersed rooting methods of some trees. All of this means that you can grow many different types of plants and trees amongst themselves, because they are all sharing from different depths and layers. And so that's not always apparent. And that's just, this graphic does a very good job of showing that and understanding, plants can be denser than what you probably realize. Here's an example of just general seasonal maintenance. In the above photo here, and granted, Omaha gets about 32 inches of rain a year. This is our average. In the above photo, we're just kind of watering in some brand new seedlings, and this is in early spring. It looks like early April. And then the last photo is at the end of August, and this is with no irrigation, no daily walkthroughs with water. This is just with seasonal moisture. So trying to understand of how to be more passive and let our seasons do what they do. You don't need to be perpetually maintaining and babying your plants. Sometimes giving them a little hardship makes them a more resilient plant. Here's another concept. It's called a perennial edible sun trap, and makes sense here in Nebraska. So the horseshoe shape, as you can see right there, you face the horseshoe facing south. So it's trapping the heat that comes from the southern angle of sun longer. So using this concept, the back area of the horseshoe, as you can see in the tall trees, they're blocking the cold north wind. So in this concept, you're holding on and potentially able to grow food longer, almost a month longer in spring and a month longer in fall. if you use this. And this scale, it makes sense to do something like this at maybe a 1/4 acre all the way up to 3 to 5 acres, maybe even bigger. But this is a really neat concept. It makes sense in our community, in Nebraska community. Here's another neat concept. It's called hugelkultur. It was developed by this Austrian, and he buries trees and trunks and dead wood, live wood, mixes it, and then creates a big mound of it. And this is, a way to create a raised bed, because you can essentially stand up at height, at waist height, and be able to pluck and harvest right out of the hill. But the brilliant part of this is that it creates its own fertilizer and nutrition in the hugelkultur mound, and it breaks down over the years. Depending on how big you make the mound, it will slowly decompress over the years as it's consuming all that fertilizer and it's being used in your plants. It's kind of a messy look for hugelkultur. There are a lot of people that don't really like it in an urban context, and it may not make sense in a backyard scale. But I have it up here to kind of show the concept of what does all those leaves do and all the tree limbs. If you were to keep them in a natural forest setting, and then they kind of piled on themselves and they created a kind of an earth shelter, what would happen? And you would trap fertilizer, and you could passively release it, and as the plants are necessary. And I think this is a really neat concept. Whether you use it at your scale in your own backyard is up to you. It probably deserves to be done at larger scale somewhere, but really neat idea. So really another design variable that we not only always think about the fruits and the nuts, but in these photos, these are all Nebraskan kind of favorites here. You have the persimmon, the pawpaw, and the hazelnuts and acorns and service berries. These are Nebraska native fruits, and then our nuts. And these are the ones that really don't need to be sprayed for pests that are from other parts of the country. These are resilient fruits and nuts, and their design elements. They're all part of a native resilient landscape. And then the wood, whether it's an alive tree and then cycled out as a tree that is cycling out as dead tree, you can let it lay in the ground and then, help hold moisture in for the plants around them. Or you can imagine its full cycle, and it can be milled to become suitable wood features. And we are actually doing this at our Omaha Permaculture headquarters. We're turning wood and old trees that are in North Omaha into garden infrastructure. So picnic tables, garden beds, tool sheds, garden signs. And then working within the community. We actually work with a lot of different types of communities that help us work and come up with the best use of land. And our new American friends and refugees that have come and made Omaha home are excellent farmers and gardeners. They they may have come from parts of the world that enjoy more rain, but they're learning of how to farm in our urban settings and in all of our clay. But it's something that, to watch them be so efficient with the gardens is just amazing. And we love being able to work with them to get them land access. This is a picture of one of our gardens that we had really good community buy-in at the beginning of the season. And then about halfway through, in the middle of summer, nobody wanted to come out and help weed. So we had all these plants that just looked like a mess. We were mowing the curb appeal, but we couldn't tell what was growing on that plant until October. We went in there in October and we went underneath all of those weeds. We pulled everything out, and this was our haul. And it actually, you can see all this food. So if you are at all concerned that you don't know how to garden or farm, this is what laziness in Nebraska will give you. If you don't even touch your garden after you planted them and it at least rained a little bit throughout the rest of the year. So, there is hope for all of us. If you have a brown thumb or a green thumb, I mean, there's really don't be scared to try. And that's what I love to include this photo. So this part, we work through all types of groups that help us achieve that goal. These groups help us create the garden infrastructure, the picnic table, or they help us go clean trash up. They help us clean the soil. We work within communities and with the people in the community to actually keep this land looking clean and presentable for the neighborhoods around them. This is one of our gardens in North Omaha, and it's one of our most popular ones. It's about 2.5 acres, and it's feeding many people with the Mission Church. And this is really just allowing these gardeners from Southeast Asia to do their best work. We just mow the curb appeal, go through and keep the trash picked up, and they make this neighborhood look wonderful. In terms of crime, this used to be one of the most dangerous parts of North Omaha. Since we have been on this property, we have looked at the Omaha Police Department statistics that you can click on a block and look at the types of statistics over years. This property has been, there's 100% decrease in the types of crime that used to be here. And even during the pandemic, this proved to be a very safe part of North Omaha when a lot of things were in question. So basically, we are out to prove that having community gardens in different neighborhoods is actually a safe feature. It helps with the neighborhood security. And as we mentioned earlier, we are brand new owners of a headquarters that we are calling Green Space. We're trying to turn this place into something that is much more beneficial for the community than what is there now. It was just an old railroad depot building that was kind of rotting in place. We have purchased it last summer, and we are beginning plans to redesign it and turn it into something that is providing local food, providing local events, permaculture workshops, and then benefiting all the neighbors in this low-income community. So this is where we hope to host all of our future events and activities. So if you ever have the chance to come through Omaha, I invite you to come down and look us up. Give me a call or an email. I'll make sure that I give you a tour. I'd be happy to do so. And then lastly, the last topic of the day, I'm wondering what our time, how quickly we've gone through here. Oh, we still have some time. We're doing pretty well here. Okay, eggs over easy. Raising chickens for eggs in Nebraska. And I just want to put in here a disclaimer, but we are not the experts. We are advocates, and we definitely are advocating for people to start growing and raising chickens in their own backyard. It was something that our country used to urge people to do back in the 1920s and the 1930s, along with those victory gardens. They said, go out and grow a victory garden, go out and raise your own hens. I've recently seen some European cities that offer free chicks to everybody in their little towns and little hens, so it's definitely a thing, at least at the municipal scale. People realize that it's a step. You can step back on it, even in cold climates, especially in cold climates, because, our greenhouses are not always bumping with food without using a lot of energy. So food in the middle of January, if you're relying completely on your garden, is a little more scarce. Whereas there are winter egg layers that focus and don't need all the daylight that most hens do. And you can, be assured that you're getting enough eggs in the middle of January and December when the light is the least. Anyway, so we have many great examples in front of you. I don't want to necessarily tell you how to raise chickens in your own backyard. With this webinar, I plan to dispel any of your fears. But at the same time, in this first slide, I have to differentiate those among you that are a little too optimistic. Why shouldn't you raise chickens for eggs? And I apologize for starting off with this slide, but I think it's very important for you to look inwards and really understand if you have the time. Do you have the time? Tending to them at least 3 times a day, no matter how automated your system is. And I'm speaking like automated, they have automated chicken doors now. Even with the automated doors, I would still urge you to make sure you check your chickens, and that they just didn't, the door didn't work, because batteries go bad, things go wrong in systems. So that ends up being probably the biggest question to ask yourself, as with any pet. You want healthy eggs, you want healthy chickens, and being able to give them the time they deserve is a very important consideration to think about. And then, are you able to purchase feed easily and regularly? Unless you supplement feed with the open grazing or with finding alternative food sources, raising chickens is not necessarily cheaper than store-bought eggs. And here we are in this inflation moment of eggs, and everybody's probably very excited to start their own flock. And I know quite a few friends who have been on the fence for years that are like, hey, Gus, now's the time. I've always wanted to raise them. And yes, I want to make sure that you know that this is what you want to do. And raising chickens is a commitment like any pet, and you must be able to provide chickens a proper setup and healthy living conditions in the extremes of Nebraska weather. So when it's 0 degrees, sometimes -10 out there, and the wind is coming from, the horizontal Nebraska wind that we know of, you need to go outside, get all bundled up, and make sure that the chickens are happy. And then the next point, vacations are possible. Yes, but please imagine ahead of time who would be your chicken sitter when you're away. You definitely need to plan accordingly, plan ahead of time. This is something, as if you're a pet owner, this is something you have to do. And then I think you want to learn and improve your system. And the chickens deserve your love, and they deserve your commitment to the lives as dignified animals. So definitely don't, devote the minimum requirement to what you think needs to devote. I'm trying to promote and advocate for you to become, your flock lover, a lover of your chicken flock, and do whatever it takes to keep them healthy and happy. I'm not necessarily just advocating for this just because it gives you eggs, which is exciting and nice, but definitely be a responsible chicken owner. Okay, now this is a little bit less out of the weeds here. Why should you raise your own chickens for eggs? Well, one, if you're here and you're on this webinar, you want to be more connected with your food. And that's an excellent reason. That's the best reason. Second reason, you and your family love farm fresh eggs. And there is a difference, believe me, between the store-bought eggs and your organic eggs coming out of your backyard. There's a huge difference. And then the third reason, you love animals. If you're not an animal lover, this might not be for you. I'm just going to say that out loud, but if you love animals, you will do very well. You will do just fine. And then if you have kids, the entire list above that. So, and then another reason you should is that you have enough suitable land for their habitat. Maybe a neighbor has better and more land that you might be able to work with and share the responsibilities. And then lastly, did we say farm fresh eggs? That's another really good reason. So, okay, now this is kind of just across the board. I don't necessarily need to have everything in caution red tape here on this slide. And I don't want to scare you with a bunch of red cautions and attentions and things. I want to encourage you, but this is the general, these are the general concerns here. Wash and sanitize your hands all the time, every day. If you're around the chickens, you just handle their feed, you just handle their eggs, you just walked in for a second, wash them. and clean them. That's hopefully a habit that we've developed during the pandemic that we are holding on to, but especially if you are getting into wanting to lay or raise your own hens. And then now, because of avian flu, the bird flu, I'm sure everybody is worried and concerned about that. For these smaller flock, people have smaller flocks like ourselves and, other farms and gardens around Nebraska. For the most part, we're not hearing too much about how avian flu is affecting them. Most of the people being affected are these larger avian complexes, where they have a lot of them and they have to get rid of a lot of them at once. So hopefully that's not a problem as much in the smaller flocks. But having said that, make sure you're paying attention to any of your birds. Maybe they're pulling off, they're being a little less social, they're not sitting with the flock as often. There are many things that can trouble a bird, trouble a chicken. And it's just being aware and perceptive, looking at sores on their feet, or if they're being pecked at, it could just simply because the pecking order that exists in any flock. And so one of the bigger enemies to your flock is moisture and in general, just being wet, the rain, the snow, and so forth. And it's always good to be restoring the bedding, whatever bedding you choose or whatever bedding you can keep dry next to the coop in a shed nearby or underneath a shelter. Make sure you have a decent supply, because that only ensures that you have healthy birds. And then being able to clean out all of the debris that is full of all of their products and their chicken waste. All the chicken waste is also garden gold. The garden gold chicken waste needs to be put aside and composted for a little bit before you can throw it right on your garden. But it's definitely one of the great products coming out of your chicken flock situation. So bedding is important, your footwear, and keeping your hands clean. But these are really the biggest concerns. And then in addition to the USDA animal food inspection, if you want to check many birds, is check with your local Nebraska Extension office. They will also know resources of helping to understand if you do have avian bird flu or some other kind of ailment in your flock. So these are kind of the biggest things to worry about. I mean, yes, there's egg-bound hens. There's a lot of other things that happen, but I don't necessarily want to get you all worried about that. A quick Google search away will dispel most of the common ailments and problems that you'll see, and solutions to your common problems that you'll see in a Nebraska chicken flock. So I didn't think that a lot of them reserved enough measure here. I'm realizing it's getting a little dark. I'm going to turn the light on behind me real quick. I apologize. Realize you're not paying attention to that. You're watching the slide anyway. So, okay, the next slide. And then here we are with the expenses. Once again, I'm kind of glossing over these expenses a little bit, but most of these costs are up to date in terms of post-pandemic, and what you might be able to find locally, either through Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. You in your local town or community, if you're in a little rural town, you should be able to find some of these resources local, whether it's a Baumgars or a Tractor Supply. There's a lot of places that have a lot of these supplies. In terms of feed, I was just going to mention about the feed. I like to mix organic feed with some other things that actually helps bring the cost down. But obviously some of that feed, the sunflower seed and the oyster shell, you do have to pay for that. But how do we bring that feed cost down is really how we can justify, really the high cost of feed and the high cost of organic feed. Our organization picks up food scraps and food waste from a local church that collects all the food waste at the Sunday congregation every weekend. And they fill 5-gallon buckets And so some of those food scraps are fresh, right out of a garden, right out of a kitchen, and we can throw them right into the chicken coop area itself, create a big pile, and that helps supplement how much of the feed we do have to use and spend. And you can supplement, your feed routine, weekly, daily, or seasonally, depending on what's there. But come summer and come when all the plants are out, there are other ways to be able to supplement their feed, and being able to source local food scraps is a really helpful way to do that. In addition to what's coming out of your own kitchen, and then what you're able to give them out into your backyard. So these are some of the costs. The other point I'm going to bring up here is the $400 for a coop for about 4 or 5 hens. Those coops that you'll find at a Tractor Supply or Baumgars, they're about, they're worth what you're paying for them. They're made with kind of a particle board. They're made with a little thinner. Sometimes they're attached with just like these little thin staples. They can't take a whole lot of shifting. They're not a solid structure, so to speak. If you were to buy $400 worth of materials with more rigid materials, you'd definitely build a more rigid, stronger box than what you can buy at the Tractor Supply. Having said that, the ones that they sell at those box stores, they're fine. You just make sure that they're in a place that will not be bothered much, or you're at risk of being knocked over or bumped and so forth. But they do just fine, and they're handy and they look nice. So those are a great way to get into it. But you may find after you've learned it that you're like, oh, I kind of want to improve on this coop design. And I encourage you to look. There's many ideas out on the internet. Okay. And then I'll move on to the next slide. And this is basic, just kind of the basics that I felt like you need, maybe describe a little bit of this process. So, you can search further for in case you have these types of problems that you're seeing. For one, in Nebraska, this may sound crazy, even with our -15 and -30 wind chill we had, the chickens don't need heat. Just keep them out of the cold north wind. So that could just be, putting their coop on the south side of your house instead of obviously not the north side of your house, and making sure they just have a windbreak. They don't need a complete enclosure. Venting is very important. You kind of heat buildup is, if there's too much heat up, even in winter, heat buildup is a thing. You want moisture even in winter, which it sounds like a low humidity situation. You want air to replenish itself. They need clean air, and it needs to be breathing throughout the year. Chickens are mostly at risk in summer in the heat. They need to stay cool. Make sure you provide shade and plenty of water so that they have spaces to stay but look healthy and happy. And like I said, I mentioned earlier, some species lay less eggs in winter because of daylight. Some lay the same amount as the rest of the year. It just depends on the breed that you're looking at. Look at the characteristics, the friendliness attributes of some of the chickens, but also take into account how often do they lay, as well as when do they lay. Some of them, like I said, will lay in winter, and that is really nice when your garden is not doing as much. And this is kind of a biggie. It's kind of the biggest rule of thumb for for anything, if you have a pet, is making sure that water is clean, and clean the water dishes, scrub them every single time. A little mildew was, they're very messy with their setups and their cages, or in their settings, and they do make a mess, but make sure they get good clean water every time, and fresh water 3 times a day. And if you have to rely on heat waterers or heaters for the waterers in winter, make sure that it's constantly kept fresh and constantly kept clean, because those waters, the heat ends up drying them out a little quicker, so you end up filling them a little quicker. So all these little variables, and making sure the They always have access to clean water. And then this may sound, obvious, but everyone wants to see the beautiful idyllic image of hens frolicking in a field, free range. Well, as much as we want to see that, there are a lot of other predators in Nebraska that love to eat chicken. And the raccoons, the fox, and cats, neighborhood cats, they all love to indulge. And they're going to be looking for ways at night to get into your coop. And then during the day, depending if you're out in the country, in the rural parts, and you have open yards, also watch out for your hawks and your falcon, all the different types of predator birds. They're going to come through and they're going to pick them up, and you won't even know where they went. The owls, you'll just, see a fluff of feathers there and not know where they went. So we have predators, and being able to understand how to keep your flock safe. These are all things to just kind of pay attention to. And there are ways to make a run that keeps them enclosed, so that you don't have these risks. Okay. And then I didn't want to be all kind of business about this. I want to make sure that if you're getting into chickens, raising chickens, that it sounds a little bit fun. These are some neat little ideas that you can try. Hang a cabbage or a head of lettuce for an entertaining treat. You just hang it and you watch them pick at it and move it around and so forth. You don't want to do that very often, but it's nice to have them have a treat when, especially this time of year when everything is brown. All of the feed that I'm giving you is all the same color. Giving them a green treat in the middle of winter is very exciting to watch them have at it. Then some hens are friendlier than others. Handling the hens as they get older or while they're chicks, make them friendlier birds when they're older. And so they're more apt to hang around with you and be more sociable. And, that definitely makes it a little easier if your friend or if your hens are, they like you, instead of they're just chasing you out of the coop or yelling at you when, hey, I need more food. Another idea is to hang mirror in the coop. It's really fun to kind of see their reactions. Obviously, they can be a little territorial, but I think that's a fun little trick to kind of see them how they engage, because watching chickens is one of the best pastimes in Nebraska, just sitting and watching them. Once you try them, you will burn away many hours of the day. You don't need anything else. You just need to watch the chickens. So these are great activities that'll help you kind of enjoy those moments. This is one of my favorites. Is putting small logs, just things that were, suitable for your wood burning fireplace or something, and just put them all over the coop, the area where they're running around during the day. And obviously this not as much right now when it's cold out, but when it gets warmer and the insect starts going, all these roly-polies and all these insect larvae and grubs, they're all underneath that. And you just, every couple days, let the insect bank build up and then flip over that little log and watch the chickens just fight over them. And they're so excited and chasing all over the little insects. So this is a really fun little way to add more food to the menu for the chickens, because they'll go find them themselves, but you definitely have to encourage them and help them. And the better you design your coop and your setup, the better and easier it is to get them a healthy and diverse diet. And then at night, because you're locking them into a tighter coop and so forth, make sure they have plenty of roosts. They want to kind of be up and they want to roost up, and that's a healthy way. And it's also easier to kind of clean up after them. You just have to clean out underneath everything in the roost. So that is actually kind of a handy design in the chicken world. And then lastly, I threw this in here because who doesn't like, things that don't fit. But these Tyrannosaurus Rex arms that you can find online are a great prop for photos. I laugh every single time. So, and that probably reveals too much about my humor. But anyway, I thought I would bring in some of the fun aspects of raising chickens in your own backyard. It does not have to be as difficult as it sounds, and do not be as scared as the avian bird flu or any of these things that are in the world news sound. I encourage you to try it. If you've attended this webinar and that's why you attended it, please don't hesitate to contact me or our organization. We can definitely help you walk through the early steps so you can get there. We are trying to encourage everybody to have the knowledge to be able to grow food in their own community. We want everybody to grow a better future. Our mission is to foster community through sustainable land stewardship. We do this through vacant land and building up better soil for the next generations. And please, look into us. Please check out our website. We're at omahapermaculture.org. And I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Gus, for that really comprehensive introduction to permaculture and all that information. We do have a few questions. Some questions came in really early. This one is, what is the best bedding for the coop, or a better way to keep things drier and not as smelly?
Okay, so it's basically called choosing a bedding. And so every fall, if you get a lot of leaves in your neighborhood, I encourage you to carry some of your leaf bags and put them aside and keep them dry. And so leaf bags are a good, easy, cheap way to have your free bedding and so forth. But other than that, trying to find hay at your local kind of farm supply place, trying to find hay or straw. You can find sometimes, discarded or used or old hay from farmers in your community, and that maybe is not as much as $8. They come down in price. So finding people with old hay is an option. And then there's even wood shavings and things. So there's ways. You don't want to get the wood dust. You don't want the sawdust. You want kind of shavings and stuff like that, because that creates, airs out all of those kind of bacteria and things that you don't want to kind of build up with the smell. But those are probably the easiest, best ways I can think of that are for the bedding, because keeping them dry is, like you said, is very important.
Another kind of related question that somebody asked, can I put my used coop bedding in the chicken run and let them scratch through it, or is that bad to do?
Used confetti, is it like the plastic?
The used coop bedding, so taking out all of the used bedding, laying it out in the run and letting the chicken scratch through it, or would you recommend they not do that?
Well, I guess I don't see any harm in that. I would encourage you though to, I called it earlier, I call that particular stuff, that's garden gold. So you could put that in a box and let it rest, and you could give that to one of your neighbors that has a garden, and they would love you for it. It's high nitrogen, it's high nutrition right there. So giving it right back to the chickens, I would encourage you to give them a leaf bag, like a leaf bag that was collected in the community that has all the acorns and the seeds and all those things. They will freak out over a brand new exposed leaf bag. So I guess I'm trying to come up with another thing. Let's say you go and you're cleaning out you're sweeping your driveway or something, and all these loose leaves are put together in twigs. That's the kind of stuff that would be perfect to put in the run, because they'll scratch through it and they'll break it down. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, and then we do have some suggestions that I want to shout out. Two people in the chat. Actually, I think it was just one person who said it twice. LaSonia said that growing herbs around the coop, or including them in the coop, helps to avoid things such as mice and snakes, and it helps keep the chickens calm. And then we have some questions that are not related to the chickens, more of the permaculture side and the design side you were mentioning. Are there currently any projects in Nebraska for solar panels or gardening projects that can assist us in being more sustainable and building more permaculture?
Ooh, that's a juicy question. I wish in the last 3 years, as we've been focusing on trying to get our own property and turn it into what I hope is the Mecca for people to come and see what permaculture, the place where if you build it, they will come. The place that people need to see it. I wish there were more examples. There are examples out there, more than there were 5 years ago. But I must admit, I am creating this green space in Omaha, Nebraska, to do just what you're asking, because I didn't feel like it was being adequately done. I think that permaculture in Nebraska is, we could be the future. And maybe this sounds really sensational, but I think that Nebraska has a lot of really great resources and a lot of things going for us, that we could be teaching the world in the 21st century how to do sustainability. We're equipped with all of the right resources here in Nebraska, and I think it's just a shift of how we do our landscapes, how we do our farming a little bit. I'm not asking everybody to change things overnight. I know a lot of people have their methods and ambitions, but the market truly determines what are we going to be growing here. And Nebraska gives a lot of opportunities. So I don't want to dispel and discourage anybody to try things, because I think that we have enormous potential here. And I'm so glad Lasagna jumped in here. I'm so glad that she's here on the webinar, because she is a hero in her own right with also animals, and she has been helping us out with quail at our farm as well. And so she always has great advice. Thanks for chiming in, Lasagna.
We have a question related to that. Are there any kind of herbs you would recommend for planting around the coop?
Ooh, gosh, if Lasagna's on here, I would let her answer that question. I don't think I would answer it as well as she would. Right now, I bring food to our coop on a regular basis. And yes, snakes and mice are definitely, they can be a thing. But having healthy predators around any system is part of a permaculture system. If you want to look at one movie that talks about permaculture, the design process, as well as the predators, there's one movie out there. It's called The Biggest Little Farm, and it does a wonderful job talking about the ecosystem and the predators and the things that you can put in your yard or in your system that creates a balanced ecosystem, so that if you have pests like the mice, that there are enough predators to balance the amount of pests in your system. And so Lasagna's suggestion is perfect. That's a great example of how to deter certain pests. And I'm sure she has some great examples of what can go there. Because for right now, I guess I do not know what kinds of plants she would be suggesting. So Lasagna, please chime in.
Okay, we do have a couple more questions. I'll combine these two. How do you source your seeds? You get them commercial saved, or do you do land raised cultivated seeds? And then how do we plant responsibly to not exacerbate pests?
Whoa. Oh, I like all three of those. Okay. So where do I get my seeds? I go through a different sources here, whether it's native seeds like cover crop seeds, grass seeds, all the things that are local and native. I go through Stock Seed Farms. They're in Murdoch, Nebraska. You can buy a whole bulk. You can get, cover crop seeds. Like I said, Dutch white clover, all the types of seeds that I feel like you have to order from big catalogs far away, but we're lucky to have Stock Seed Farm here in Nebraska. And so they are a very good source. As far as, our food seeds and everything, I order from quite a few different seed savers and all the greats that are here in the Midwest. Seed savers, it's probably the one that I'm thinking about the most, because we did just place a big order there. I also use Chief Nursery. I also for trees. I also which they're out of Wisconsin. I also use the Arbor Day Foundation here in Nebraska. I also use Great Plains Nursery out of Nebraska. So Nebraska Statewide Arboretum is about to have their spring sale next month. They are an excellent source. They have a sale in Lincoln and in Omaha, and that's coming up here in April. So I encourage you to check up with NSA, Nebraska Statewide Arboretum. Their plants are amazing and they're worth every penny. So definitely look out for their sales. They should be in your community soon.
Okay. I just want to shout out what Lasagna responded. Lavender and mints are a good start, and you could also grow your own mealworms and black soldier flies for alternative food sources for your chickens, as far as herbs for planting around the chicken coop goes. Do you have time for about 3 more questions, Gus?
Sure.
Okay, so we have a question from Lasagna. In regards to water, have they looked into the potential endocrine disruptors that come as a result of pesticides, herbicides, and runoff? Is that something you would know, Gus?
I can't speak on behalf of that. The endocrine disruptors, that's farming related problems, that's I think what she's also getting at, and that is related, and it's not exactly addressing that system, but all these new Costco chicken farms, the big barns that are now around Fremont and everywhere. I remember going to some of the water quality kind of community presentations, and one of our water experts locally pointed out the fact that you put that many female chickens and hens along a water landscape, that their defecation, their feces, their everything is being pulled out into the community to dry out and everything, and then it rains on those piles, and all of those, which we don't think about, we just think it's chicken waste, but it's hormones. They're all females. So that means Lasagna's got a great question there about the endocrine, hormonal components to this. So all those hens that are, hundreds of thousands, almost millions of hens that are now in Nebraska are all adding estrogen to our rivers and landscapes. And as long as you're not drinking out of it, you're okay. But it just what does it mean for our environment? What does it mean for everything else that ripples from that? So I think that's a very important point. Who are we becoming as we create these big food systems? And that goes to my earlier slide. It's like my 5th slide is like, what are we doing when we're doing with farming? Do we need to do more farming or more conservation? One of these ways is going to make a healthier, more enlightened human in the future, hopefully.
Okay, and we have a question about the quail. Oh,
I see your thyroid question there. Yeah, okay.
We have a question about the quail. Brenda asks, where can we get quail locally if somebody wanted to start raising quail?
Gosh, now I feel like Lasagna should be the expert on here, but Lasagna pointed out, she was able to find some from local people, but there's some mail order places that I had to order from, and they are so fragile. They're so delicate. You have to have a faint heart on raising them when they're really young, because they are very fragile little birds. And you're being sent 30 in the mail, and hopefully your curve is very, you got to be ready for them, and you need to be very, very maternal. And Lasagna is that person. I tell you, I reassure you, she does a wonderful job. But yeah, she's right. She's with the incubators. That's the best way to kind of ensure that you get a good success rate.
Okay. And then we have a question from Courtney. Do you come out to people's properties? Would you be able to go to somebody's house, their own property, and give them a recommendation on their permaculture setup? Is that something that people would be able to contact you about?
Yes. So we do, as I mentioned during the slideshow, we do consulting, and depends on how far you are from Omaha and what time of year it is regardless of my availability to be able to do that. But we do have a fee structure for being able to do the consulting at different levels of how much help do you need? Do you need the full design strategy? Do you need a walkthrough? or do you need a more a la carte approach? But ultimately, the best, what we're trying to walk people into is to have a design in front of them, a big, drawn out design that I like to draw it out because you can always add and edit, and then tape it up to your kitchen window or your sliding door that goes out onto your patio into your backyard. And every morning with your coffee, you look at that design and you just absorb it and think, like, okay, what makes sense to add this feature this year? What makes sense to put something off for next year? How much can I afford? All those other things, it's like, and when we do a design, we kind of throw the kitchen sink into a design. We just like, hey, you're going to see all these really neat features. You don't have to do all of them, but if you had your own backyard and your own design with it, with what I think are, design choices based on efficiency and the best sun and the best water and all those things, you will then be able to have the equipment, the know-how to be able to do whatever you want to do in your backyard and create your own little oasis. So yes, short answer, yes, we do that. And I can do it here in the confines in Omaha, and then assist you if you happen to be further out, or we can take a more long-term approach and I can be consulting you over throughout the year or over years. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Yeah, and any information for contacting you, would people be able to find your contact at omahapermaculture.org?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. If Lasagna is still here, we did have a question for Lasagna specifically. If she has a Facebook page that she'd like to shout out in the chat or have me shout out verbally, so people would be able to follow her on Facebook. I'm not sure if she'd be able to answer this question, but we'll see. Otherwise,
unfortunately, I don't think she has
yeah.
one. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lasagna, but if anyone wants to get a hold of Lasagna, she should put up her email, definitely. But you can work through me, and I will definitely make sure she gets the questions or information.
Okay, and yeah, again, the website to learn more about Omaha Permaculture and contact Gus is omahapermaculture.org. Yeah, and I think that's it. We don't have any more questions. Is there anything that you'd like to add on at the end here?
Thank you all for attending this webinar. I hope I answered most of your questions. I hope I dispelled any fears. I didn't want to make it seem too daunting, and I am pretty sure you can do it.
Okay, thank you all for attending. We do have a poll that should have just popped up on your screen. We'd love it if you'd be able to complete that. But otherwise, everybody have a great night. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for attending this one.